Welcome to the Three-Man Weave Show hosted by SportsbookReview.com. We are the Three-Man Weave. My name is Ky McKeon, hosting on this wonderful Tuesday. Great slate of games today, per usual. Guys, before we get started, please go to sbrpicks.com/NCAAB for all your college basketball content needs. They have other sports there too, sbrpicks.com. In general, just a great website to hang around constantly. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel you're watching. SBR Sports Picks is the name. Subscribe, like our videos, helps us out, helps SBR out, helps everyone out. Fellas, how we doing? Good day of basketball yesterday. Matt Cox, start with you. Back in Chicago.
Yes, sir.
Traveled back yesterday. What'd you think of the slate of games on Monday?
Back in Chicago, Ky, but St. Louis, as you can see here, always in my heart. We'll be back very shortly. A lot of interesting results yesterday, but none more head-scratching. I guess now we probably should come to expect this from Michigan State. Sparty in complete disarray. I guess my takeaway is that this team is basically on my no-bet list. I keep a repository of teams that just continue to confound me. I can't figure them out. I'm not going to all of a sudden come back around and try and start fading Michigan State, but until they solve their internal warts, it's just a team I want no part of. Jim?
Matt, the internal warts are many. If Tom Izzo was still the coach of this team, he'd be losing his mind. But clearly he must have retired because this couldn't possibly be a team he is rolling out there. Weirdly, after the game, he was very much of the, we're not panicking. I think he said it's not Panicsville. Mm-hmm. And you know what, Tom? I'll do it for you. That team looked completely lifeless. Apparently after the game, Rocket Watts asked to be moved back to shooting guard. So that means you're getting a ton of Foster Loyer and AJ Hoggard the rest of the season. And Hoggard looked solid yesterday, but man, their bigs look terrible. They don't have a point guard. Their wings are shooting less. They're 30% on twos so far this year. Their wings are, and they are 14th in the Big Ten in 2-point percentage on offense and 14th in 2-point percentage defense. So I don't really know how they could get worse. So maybe this is rock bottom, but yikes.
Yeah, I'm going to pile on the Michigan State hate.
Yes, I love it.
What the heck did we just see? And Jim, you pointed this out internally. It was even sadder, they couldn't even win the second half after getting bludgeoned in the first half down 20.
Yeah, where's the pride?
They had no fight. There was none. This is not a Sparty team we are used to. Hashtag 2020, guys. Kentucky sucks. Michigan State sucks. Duke sucks. The big dogs all suck. But that's the kind of year it's been. We will get into actual basketball now. Got a great lineup of games. We're going to start in the ACC with Florida State at Clemson. The Tigers are favored by 2 currently. I think it dipped under 2 for a second this morning. Might be there still, 1.5. Florida State's looked pretty mortal, guys, after the Indiana and Florida games, right? UCF tanked them. Gardner-Webb covered against them. Matt, Florida State's pretty much the biggest team in the country. Do you think they bounce back and catch a Clemson team that looked a little bit more to themselves against Virginia Tech in their first ACC game?
Yeah, my gut definitely leans toward the Noles. I saw they took some early money here. I believe the line's around +1 right now. I think it opened Clemson as a 2.5-point favorite. Hold me accountable there. But the Noles feel right. I just think the length and the athleticism that they have, they can just create plays one-on-one in space and transition in the half court. Maybe that can somewhat be a kryptonite against Clemson's stifling defense. I don't really have a strong take here. I think the pace should be super slow. I think Clemson's done a really nice job of controlling the tempo this year. So if you're looking at a total, I think the under probably is the right side there, although it is a low number as I see right now. Jim?
Matt, I believe, aren't you on the over in this game?
I am not. I'm not on the over. Am I?
I think you are.
Oh, no.
This one's odd to me because Clemson's defense has been elite, but they're not great, like keeping people off the line or off the offensive glass. And that's really where Florida State's excelled offensively this year. They haven't really shot the ball that well. So maybe that's a way they can score. This feels, I've said multiple times this season that, it's two defenses are better than 2 offenses, but it feels like every one of those games has gone over. So perhaps this one is the same way. Clemson can shoot a little bit. Maybe they can shoot over the FSU length. I don't know, man. This is just, it's kind of an odd game. I'm concerned about Florida State because even that Florida performance, they were down until Keontae Johnson collapsed. So I'm hesitant to even say that was like a good performance. So I'm kind of wait and see on this Noles team right now.
Yeah, guys, I like Florida State today. Their defense has been very good. It's good every year under Hamilton, but especially going to be effective, I think, today against Clemson, who has kind of a shaky backcourt in terms of ball handling. I think they're going to force a lot of turnovers with their extreme length. And I also think they have plenty of answers for Amir Sims, who is terrific, but he's still a 6'8" forward who I think can get kind of eaten up with Florida State's size. Like Jim said, the glass advantage and the free throw line advantage is huge for Florida State in this game. So this is actually my best bet, going to get it out of the way. Florida State +2, locking it in.
Flag early.
Yes, planting the flag. I'd probably take Florida State as a dog, pretty much any number. I really like the Noles today.
Jim, you're right. I am on the over for a very small, teeny tiny peanuts.
I was surprised to hear you say, like, if any side is the under, I was like, well, except for your side. I'm confused.
I've just completely lost all track of my bets at this point. My brain is mush. But anyway, I mean, this number is just too low, I think, is why I played it. I made it around the mid-130s. But if you take the over, don't expect an offensive explosion. You're going to be scrapping and clawing to reach the mountaintop there. But I do think it's too low. So I'll probably endorse a small overplay, even at the current price at 130. It's come down a little bit, so there is some value there.
Number's quite low. I agree.
Yeah. Our next game on the slate is an SEC contest between Ole Miss and Alabama. The Tide up to -2. I believe it opened around 1. Actually, correct me if I'm wrong on that one, guys. Might be wrong on the opener, but -2 currently for Alabama. I would argue this is a must-win for the Tide in terms of a tournament bid setting. You're playing a similar caliber team here at home in Mississippi. Ole Miss, though, guys, 5th in the country in defense per KenPom. That really struck me as a shock when I looked at that stat. Jim, they haven't exactly played anybody, and they lost to Dayton. Can Ole Miss keep it close, or does Alabama finally look like the Alabama we thought in the preseason?
Yeah, Ky, the Ole Miss defense thing, like you said, they haven't really played anybody. They're 5th in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency. It's mostly because of 2-point percentage. And they've got Romello White in there kind of locking down the paint, and that's helped them a lot. But they're not playing teams that are, proficient at scoring inside. Now they're today not playing one either. Alabama is just bombs away from 3. Nate Oates' quotes are all about how, like, oh, we're just not making shots. But to me, when I watch Alabama, they've confused quick shots with quality shots. They're taking quick threes basically every time down the court, and they're just like, well, they'll go in eventually. But a lot of them are contested. A lot of them are not their best shooters. It's a lot of some of their front court guys taking them. Guys that aren't, it's not Petty and Shackelford taking it every time down the floor, really is the issue. So that team feels there's something odd going on. Petty and Rojas missed last game for undisclosed reasons, non-COVID, non-injury related. So you got to think it's like disciplinary. So yeah, I kind of get the heebie-jeebies with Alabama, unfortunately. Matthew, I'm sorry.
Jim, I feel kind of slimy. I'm basically trying to steal your ex-wife here with Nate Oates. I will be on the Tide.
We're on bad terms. She's all yours.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad we could hash that out openly. Transparency is very important, obviously. So, Nate Oates, a lot of the quotes have bugged me too, Jim, but I think the cliche narrative applies here. As Jovan Quinerly goes, the Crimson Tide go. He was phenomenal in their most recent game against East Tennessee State, 14 points, 9 assists. Only 1 turnover that comes off a game which he had 6 in the prior. You basically strip out their results. When Quinerly plays well, Bama plays well. All of their covers and large victories have come when Quinerly has been efficient, scoring and distributing, taking care of the ball. When they've struggled, it's been highly tied to his inconsistency. I'm hoping that last game is a launching pad to a more consistent run. I know his career track record does not support a long streak of very good games in a row. He's still finding his way. I've seen Nate Oates, transform, good talented guards into offensive engines. I'm still banking on Quinerly being that guy for this team. So I think this is the right spot to take the Tide.
Here's what I'll add to that, Matt. Quinerly is important because they have to play Herb Jones as like a quasi point forward.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best cutters in the country. He's phenomenal off the ball, getting into a gap and getting a layup or a dunk, so you lose that element when he's on the ball. And then it takes away from his defensive energy a little bit. One of the best defenders in the country, but if he's got to focus on playmaking, that really puts them in trouble defensively. Quinerly's huge. All right, Ky, sorry, back to you there.
That's all right. No, we got an old-fashioned tempo battle in this one too, guys. Oates obviously wants to run up and down. Kermit wants to play in the half court. Who controls the tempo, controls the game. I actually like the Tide as well. Even at 2, I'd probably lean that way. Just to lean, though. No official plays for old Ky here. All right, moving on down the slate to Purdue at Rutgers. Rutgers favored by 3, looking amazing so far, really. But Cliff Omoruyi still probably out for the Scarlet Knights. He really matters, guys, and we saw that in the Ohio State game. Miles Johnson is a great big in his own right, but he's very foul prone. They need another body up front, especially against a Purdue team with so much size. Also, Matt Jacob Young, questionable on his health. I think he also had an early exit in that Ohio State game. Where do you see this one going?
Broken record alert. Big Ten unders. They're coming again.
I'll support you, Matt. Here, I've got some evidence too. So you say first, and I'll back you up.
I have the Undertaker on my side. That's all I need. Started at 139. The totals come down to 136. So again, some folks out there potentially agree with us. Rutgers is playing faster than we thought. We have to accept that. I think we've adjusted in our tempo ratings. They have more offensive talent. I think Pikel's letting them go. I think part of it was skewed by who they played early as well. But I think Rutgers is a team that wants to get up and down, wants to attack and transition when they have the opportunity. However, we saw Purdue slow down Iowa, one of the few teams in the country that seem impossible to slow down. Matt Painter teams, especially on the road, are not going to get caught in a track meet. I feel very confident this game plays to a low pace. The question is, can both defenses keep opposing offenses from scoring efficiently? I'm betting on yes. Jim, where do you stand? I believe you support.
Agreed. I'm not taking it officially at this number. Unfortunately, I'm not actually gonna play the under, but I think it's the right side, the way I lean. Even if Young does play, he's clearly banged up. When Geo Baker's on the court, they've played slower. The pivot analysis on-off stats have borne that out in terms of tempo, so I think that matters. And then, Johnson is a beast against whether it's Travion Williams or Zach Edey in there. Hopefully can guard them one-on-one somewhat, which takes away a lot of what Purdue wants to do with bending the defense and running motion off of one guy in the post. So I think that helps the under. And the other end, Rutgers really only has one shooter in Ron Harper Jr. And if Purdue can lock him up, and I think Painter is smart enough to get someone with length on him, like Mason Gillis or Aaron Wheeler, and then everybody else, you don't have to worry about as much. And that's how you beat Purdue's packed-in defense, is shooting over the top. So, I think both teams can stop what the other's going to do. I would lean the under, but not officially going to take it. I just had a note in the chat. Sam Reed said, "Don't you dare say Purdue today." And I lean that way, but I'm not going to give it out. I'm not going to give up Purdue. I'm just as exasperated with them as you are, Sam. So, agreed.
I just want to solidify the under for me as an official play. I know I was a little wishy-washy there in my explanation, but I see it at 136. 135 is right through the line in the sand. So anything above 135 and above, I still think the under is the side.
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to go ahead and just lock that in with you at 136. Our unders have been kind of brutal lately on this show. So, of course, hesitant to dip the toe back in the water. But I think it is, the right side. As Jim said, Rutgers is playing a lot faster. Maybe you said it, Matt. And that's certainly a concern. But I really think both teams have the personnel to stop one another. Rutgers especially, they're extremely tough and extremely physical, and they defend the three very well. And of course, Purdue wants to shoot threes and get it into the post to Travion Williams and and Edey. They're terrific freshmen. But I don't think it's going to be a picnic scoring against Rutgers. I don't think it's going to be a picnic on the other end as well. I'd lean Rutgers in the side actually, but that's just a lean. I will lock in the under 136 with you, Matthew. Moving on, staying in the same conference, the Big Ten, Northwestern, Chicago's Big Ten team.
Yeah, it is.
Iowa, this spread has come down slightly. I think it's 10.5 right now. Iowa favored. Guys, should we just bet Northwestern auto bet at this point? I mean, they've looked terrific. Michigan State, Indiana, Ohio State, all vanquished. Cats are 3-0 for the first time in the Big Ten in like 50 years. Jim, does that stop tonight with an Iowa team that could certainly have the horses to put 100 points on these guys?
Yeah, that's kind of my lean, just from a gut sense. I before I even lined this game, before I saw the line, I looked at this and I said, Northwestern's 3-0. Iowa's off a gut-wrenching road loss at Minnesota, coming back home to the comforts of Iowa City. This feels like Iowa kind of runs away. And Northwestern's shown the propensity to play fast, and I don't think you can play fast with Iowa unless you know for certain that you can outscore them. And I'm not quite there yet on Northwestern's offense to where I think they can outscore or even score with this Iowa squad. So I would lean towards Iowa. I ended up making the number right around where it is. So I'm not officially taking it, but it just feels like kind of an Iowa get right, buy low, sell high spot, which completely, flopped yesterday for Michigan State. So take that for what you will. But I would lean towards Iowa in this one. Ky, you mentioned right before the show, you asked about Big Ten dogs, and I don't have the stats for conference only, but Big Ten teams this year are 19-11 against the number as underdogs. So perhaps that's more the trend that needs to be looked at, or something that matters more. Matt, what do you got here? Help me out. Give me a guidepost.
I'm looking at last matchup, Northwestern with Ohio State. The Buckeyes had success scoring inside in that game, and that's a concern when you're going up against Luka Garza, who I think you're going to have to double team. Any team that has been tried to play him one-on-one, that's just not going to work. And Northwestern has very good defenders. They're a strong team defensive squad. Chase Audige is a lockdown on-ball defender, but Iowa's balance on the perimeter. You can't just stick Audige on one guy. There's too many weapons there. I just don't think this is the right spot for Northwestern. This feels like I'm calling them a paper tiger. I just don't think this is the right time to all of a sudden hop in on this Northwestern run against Iowa at home in a game that probably should play to a high number because both teams like to run, which I think will be a mistake in this matchup. So I guess I would lean Iowa, but the spread's a little too high for my liking.
It's worth noting, guys, that Iowa should have beaten Minnesota. They should have won that game.
Yes.
Per Kim Pom, Iowa at one point near the end of the game had a 98.8% win probability. Fred McAfee, frankly, just kind of screwed up the end game.
Toussaint missed a couple free throws too. It was a painful final minute for the Hawkeyes.
So that Iowa loss, I mean, it wasn't too far away from Iowa covering at the end of the game, right? So we'd probably be talking in a different lens had that been the case.
Yep.
I'm going to say screw it, guys, and lean Northwestern, because why get in front of the Cats right now? They are trending up, and why not? Leans are no harm, no foul, I think. Any questions from the chat mob, fellas, before we move on with our rundown?
Yeah, a lot of questions about Reggie Workman kicked off the initial chatter on this. Omaha at Kansas State. Kansas State has been a pinata for this program starting off. They've had a couple of more recent inspiring efforts, I'll say, to put it kindly. I'm not trying to throw cold water on the Purple Kittens too much there. Omaha, I believe the key question is, are they healthy? They've had a revolving door of roster inconsistencies throughout the non-con. They've been on a world tour. They went home or I guess they kind of have a slight layover or layoff before this one. Jim, do you think the Mavericks come out healthy, rested, and compete with the Wildcats?
If I knew that Zach Thornhill and Marco Smith were playing for sure, like two of their top four guards, then I'd probably be on Omaha here. I don't think Kansas State should be favored by double digits over anybody, quite honestly, but you don't know that for sure. I'll check the lineup, but they've kind of varied who's been starting, even when they're healthy. So I'm probably staying away from this one, or Omaha if you really like it. But K-State is a favorite. Ugh.
That's where I'm at, Jim. I actually had Omaha written down as a play, but their injury troubles kind of scare me, so I am staying away as well.
James Zimler asking about Northeastern West Virginia. We had some internal chatter about this. Ky, Northeastern I think has been a pet team of ours. Maybe undervalued in some of the betting markets. Tyson Walker, one of our favorite point guards in the entire country, not just mid-major land. But he's going to need some help against West Virginia. This could be, in my opinion, this feels like a men versus the boys type of game. I'm not sure that the smarts and intelligence of Northeastern and their execution can really do a lot against the overwhelming defensive blanket that is West Virginia. Is this a mountain you run out, or do you think the Huskies keep it close?
I think there's a very good chance this is a blowout. West Virginia is going to torture Northeastern's guards outside of Tyson Walker. Tyson Walker is the only player on Northeastern that can handle the ball and score. It's kind of a tough situation for the Huskies. If you watch the UMass game, the very first game of the season, they put just a little bit of full court pressure on Northeastern. They could not handle it, especially when Walker was out of the game. What's West Virginia going to do against them? I think it's going to be a 20-point blowout for West Virginia, maybe even higher.
Yeah, my gut lean was blowout here. The men versus boys is a good way to put it. I think West Virginia had that sleepy performance against North Texas. They shouldn't take this team lightly. They should be aware of Northeastern can challenge them if they're lazy. So we'll see.
Yep. Yeah, this is a young Northeastern team too. So I think you need experience to compete with the Bob Huggins coach team. 80 Proof asking a little twofer first half question. Gonzaga and Baylor. What do we say on this? Is we saw Gonzaga be sleepy last night in the second half.
I got something to say about that.
Yeah. Take the mic.
Had I known Gonzaga was going to play the 8, 9, 10 guy on their team in the entire second half, probably wouldn't have been on the -40. So because of that, because I can see that happening again, Suggs might be resting again in this game. I do not like Gonzaga in this game, but it is Gonzaga, and Dixie State probably isn't totally afraid to run with them, or maybe they can't even control the pace, let alone dictate it. So I don't have any lean, but I just wanted to get the Gonzaga game off my chest because that was a tough one after the halftime score looking quite promising for the Zags.
Yeah, I think the first half's the right move because, Gonzaga's on this back-to-back. They played last night. They played on Saturday against Virginia. They're going to play the starters some and hopefully, run out Dixie State, who is also Frank Stain, one of their best players, tweeted that he has coronavirus. I think maybe there's a couple others possibly out. Just based on, if a program has one, it's hard to think that's isolated, even with contact tracing. So I think Gonzaga first half is probably the right, if you're going to bet that game, that would be the best setup for a win, if I had to say.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to pick one of these two, I'd go Baylor. I just think they're excited to play. We haven't seen them in a while. And against Central Arkansas, a team that has no desire to slow down the pace. It's a big number, but 35 won't feel that large when you're going to have what likely will be a high 70s possession game. So I would take the Bears in that one first half. We had a couple of questions about Towson, Iona. I believe that's postponed. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, I posted the Rothstein tweet in there just because last time we said a game was canceled and it wasn't.
It wasn't.
So I wanted to make sure I had some evidence, some support for saying that.
All right, we're now 1 for 2 on game cancellation reporting. That's good. Ky, back to you.
All righty, let's go to the AAC. Houston at Tulsa. Last time I checked, guys, this spread's around 8 in favor of Houston. I believe it touched 8.5, right, as we were talking this morning. Houston, guys, let's talk about them real quick. They are, first of all, an incredible team. Obviously, they're a top 5 team currently in the country from the AP poll perspective. We think they're a bona fide top 10 team, but they should not have covered against UCF. They still did, and they're still awesome. I just want to point that out. UCF gave them quite the fight. And then Tulsa, guys, is just an ugly team, right? They muck it up defensively. They're top 40 defense in the country. They just beat Memphis. Memphis looked awful. I will say Memphis had 20 turnovers and went 10 for 22 from the free throw line, and Tulsa still only won by 7. Probably a little bit concerning against a Houston team that we'll say is just marginally better coached than Memphis. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, remember, Houston lost at Tulsa last year, and then in the revenge spot, wiped them out by 30 when they got him back at home. If I'm Kelvin Sampson and that veteran-laden team, it's a copy-paste roster of last season. I think they go into Tulsa with that fresh on top of the mind and execute against the zone. It's going to be a slow, most likely a half-court drag-out type game. I think the Cougars escaped, as Ky mentioned, against UCF. I think they got sort of that holiday season slow, lethargic effort out of their system. I think we see a really, really strong Houston effort tonight, especially with Caleb Mills, Marcus Sasser, their second, third games back, coming back from those injuries. Just a full, all hands on deck, a really strong Houston effort tonight. So I would lean toward the Cougs. Jim?
I think I have a slight lean towards Tulsa just because you got to make shots against them, and Houston's not the greatest shooting team. This is not a strong lean at all, but I just think with Matt, like you said, Sasser and Mills aren't really at their tip-top shape. They're still trying to get them worked in. And Tulsa's defense has just been confounding for teams repeatedly. I'm not entirely sure why. I don't watch it and think this is some crazy complicated zone. They don't have a ton of length. They're like 175th in average height, but teams have struggled to solve it. Houston got off to that really slow start against UCF, who's not as good a defensive team as Tulsa. Still waiting to see. I mean, this is their second road game now, so maybe that does help, but it's slight lean on the number. Having to have Houston win by double digits to cover isn't super exciting to me. So, but hard stay away. Gross game.
Fair enough. I agree. It will be a gross game to watch. All right, moving on. Another ACC game here. Miami at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech favored by 6. Guys, is Miami healthy? Because they really suck when they are not healthy. Crazy Purdue win aside. They lost to Florida Gulf Coast. They lost to Pitt. They didn't cover against Jacksonville. And this Virginia Tech team is firing on all cylinders right now. They're kind of a machine, a sneaky machine right now in college basketball. Jim, personally, I think the Hokies might cover this one pretty easily. But you've been a Canes backer early on in the season. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I've finally wisened up, Ky. They're pretty bad when they're not, like you said, when they're not really at all healthy. They did get the debut from Earl Timberlake last game. Elijah Olani from Stony Brook is playing. It's just reported that Likes and McGusty are both game time decisions. So obviously that's a pretty gigantic factor. If they're both in or if they're both out, that's a pretty huge swing to the spread. But even if they are, the team just has looked awful right now. I mean, they can't make shots from anywhere. It looks uninspired. The fan base is pretty upset with Larinaga. They've got a thread on their fan board that is Jimmy L's Larinaga. So like, because he's taking so many losses. Yeah. So there's a little bit of trouble down in Coral Gables. I think it's a stay away from me, even if they both play like some Augusta. I want to see a decent performance from this team before I trust them.
Yeah, that's kind of how we like to approach injuries. It's if a guy's coming back or he's dicey to play, just because we see him in the lineup, I don't think we're going to rush to make a huge bet. If it's a serious injury, he's probably not going to be 100%, right? He's probably going to have some rust and wear and tear that first game back. So I'm not going to spend all my time trying to decipher who's going to play, who's not going to play, how healthy each guy is. What I'm focusing more on is the fact that Jim Larinaga talked about the lack of practice consistency. This is something I think we took for granted last year, but found out a lot of these teams with 3, 4, 5 guys out, whether they're key players or not, really throws a wrench in their preparation, their scouting, and so that's a situation I want to stay away from. I made this spread closer to 7.5. So if this line were to come down a little bit based on one of those positive injury news for Miami, I actually might do a counter punch here with the Hokies. But as of now, I will stay away.
I'm with you, Matt. That would be kind of what I'd be looking for on this one.
Moving on to our last game on the rundown before our best bets and some final chat questions. Wofford at Mercer. We're talking SoCon, guys. Very exciting. We love the SoCon, one of our favorite mid-major conferences. This spread has come down a little bit. Mercer now only a 1.5-point favorite. Wofford hung tough against Richmond and South Carolina, but couldn't handle Texas A&M. Obviously, Wofford is a well-coached basketball team, very good basketball team, and so is Mercer in their own right. They just got beat by Georgia State in a revenge game. They couldn't cover against Kennesaw, who is strangely 5-0 against the spread. Something for a conversation for a later day on them. Again, a tempo battle here. Mercer runs, Wofford plays slow. Matt, which way are you leaning, Bears or Terriers?
I'm going to be on the Bears here. I hate going against the Terriers and just such a well-coached team, especially what I've seen early on. But I think Mercer is the real deal. I think we saw what they did early on in the year, particularly to Georgia State and Georgia Tech, right out of the chute. We gave them a big old upgrade in our ratings. Had a couple of, came back down to earth in the rematch against Georgia State. But I thought the win at Georgia Southern was very impressive. That was a Georgia Southern team that's starting to really trend up as well. You start to kind of pick apart the results of Mercer. I think this team is still all the way legit, a dark horse to win this conference, in my opinion. I think Furman's still obviously the favorite. But I think Mercer is right there, and this is, first conference game at home. I think they assert their dominance. I think they're the slightly better team, so I'll go with the Bears.
Yeah, this is kind of the 3-4 to Furman and Greensboro's 1-2 in the SoCon.
Yep.
But I think Mercer's fully capable of elevating up into that level. They're getting a little healthier. Sophomore guard Kamar Robertson came back last game. He started 17 games as a freshman. I think the backcourt depth actually really helps. They've been playing Alvarez, Cummings, and Gary tons and tons of minutes. So getting a little more depth does help them. And then Wofford was missing BJ Mack, their big wide body South Florida transfer center against Texas A&M. So they got beat up in the paint. He was out with knee soreness, so we're not positive he'll be back. But without him, Furman can probably have their way inside. Got to keep an eye on that one. And Matt, you mentioned how well coached Wofford is. Mercer's really well coached too. I think it's not quite like a mismatch.
No, not at all.
So
we love Gary.
Yeah. So I'm taking Mercer at -2 also. I just think it's the right side. I like the way you spelled it out with the conference opener. Kind of a chance to make a relative sort of statement here. I just think they're slightly better. So getting that short line at home, I'll go with it. The Bears.
It's a good note on the Mack injury, Jim, just because I think Wofford will need size up front to combat Masaz Bender, former West Virginia transfer, who's really emerged as a force inside, 6'11". He commands double teams when he's on and can stay out of foul trouble. Coming off of 21-point game at Kennesaw, had 11 points in 12 minutes the game prior. So, yeah, I think Max availability is a huge issue here.
Putting a bow on Mercer real quick, one of their main focuses on defense is taking away the three-point line. Wofford second in the country in three-point attempt rate. That is what they use to score. That is their scoring avenue, and Mercer defends it well. So I, too, like the Bears in this game. We're going to Jim.
63.5% of their shots from beyond the arc. That's just all they do. It's just bomb.
We're going to Jim for his best bet to kick us off on our final section here. Jim, who do you like tonight?
I've got a couple questions in the chat on this game, so I'm happy to be able to answer it. A lot of people asking about Coppin State versus Rider. I like Rider here. I just kind of there's some sense of kind of like the Wofford Mercer thing where Ryder's getting healthier. They got Rodney Rocket Henderson back after he missed a game against Iona. He'd kind of formed a nice dynamic duo with Dwight Murray to start the season. So getting him back is huge for the offense. And then Coppin State just continues to lose bodies. DeJuan Clayton's been out for 6 games. DeMontis Sakikis missed last game. Then DeTark, a starting wing, missed last game. Justin Steers, a veteran forward, hasn't played. I think there's one other guy. It's not coming to me right now. Oh, Sharif Knox, the St. Joe's transfer.
St. Joe's transfer
has also been out. So like they're ravaged. They played pretty tough lately, but this is the last game in their non-conference slate before MEAC play starts. And I could just see them kind of cracking a little bit where they're like, man, we've been in this world tour. This is our 8th road game of the last month. We've got MEAC finally on the horizon. So I like Ryder a lot. I've seen it at -2. It's been bet down some. So, perhaps the market doesn't quite agree with me, but 3.5 right now is what I'll lock it in at. Ryder -3.5.
Yeah, maybe the market knows something about those Coppin injuries. Maybe they're getting guys back we don't know about, or Ryder has guys out that we are not privy to. But I'm with you, Jim. I don't see any reason why Coppin should be trotting out guys who are, unless they're all the way for sure 100%. Against, in a non-conference game, right? There's really nothing at stake here. Coppin's results been all over the map, so I think this is a good spot where they lay a stinker, and I think Ryder is the right side. I will co-sign that one, and I'll keep the mic for my best bet.
Please
take it, Matt.
Just want to reiterate that Jim and I have hashed out our, he has put Nate Oates behind him, just because we now have, a temporary, love affair. I don't want to, there's no bad blood between Jim and I. I will be on the Crimson Tide tonight. I'm still a believer in this Alabama team. And that's all. I'm basically I'm latching on to the Javon Quinterly redemption story here. I think he parlays that momentum from last game into a strong effort tonight against a good Ole Miss team, but I think that's the right spot for the Tide. So I will be on Alabama. Ky, where are you at?
Yeah, Florida State, for the reasons said earlier, was my best bet. As a reminder, Florida State +2 was what it was earlier, guys. Like I said, anything as a dog, I like the Seminoles tonight. Any final chat mob questions? We ran a little bit long. Matt, what do we got to finish off the show?
Yeah, we got 2 that we definitely need to talk about. Sean Donovan and many others asking about LSU, Texas, A&M. The big question mark here is Javonte Smart's availability.
Should be back. I think he should
be back. Okay.
Tail end of COVID procedures last game. So.
LSU's not been good as a favorite, but I think they need Smart in this matchup. So I would not touch this game on either side unless you have a strong lean. If you subscribe to Jim's theory, which I think is very logical, then I think A&M actually could have some value. Smart's such an important player on both sides of the ball. Any thoughts on this one, guys?
I prefer A&M, but the numbers come down. 7.5, 7 last night was intriguing to me, but 6.5, a little bit less so.
And Patricia asked about Santa Clara, USC. Ky, we are not feeling good about this one, but I know we are both on the dog. Tell us why we are scared, or why I like that.
I think I missed the number, which is great because I liked it at 12. Well, my number said I liked it at 12 for Santa Clara, which frankly scares me. And the reason is Santa Clara needs to score inside to score the basketball, and USC is literally the biggest team in the country. However, on the other end, Santa Clara is the 4th biggest team in the country. It really is a size versus size battle in this game, which, depending on how you look at it, it's either, okay, Santa Clara gets shut down by all the USC size, they finally met their match, or USC suddenly can't score because they're facing a team that's equal in their height. And we all know Andy Enfield, not the greatest coach in the country. I mean, USC's talent obviously should overwhelm Santa Clara, but I don't think it's going to be the case. I still lean the dog at 10, but that number's gotten too low for me to take it. Strangely, I'm leaning the over a little bit, but that just doesn't make any sense in my head. So I cannot in good conscience give that play out. That's where I stand there, Matt.
Ky, I think your over take here is akin to my over on the Clemson Florida State. Matchup wise, it doesn't really amount to much, but just because the sheer fact that the total's too low, that makes sense to me. For those who have not watched Santa Clara, as Ky mentioned, they basically start 3 wings that are all 6'5" to 6'7", and 2 big guys 6'11" each. This is an overwhelming amount of length. They are not fun to watch on the offensive end, but they can defend. So this could be. If you think this is a sleepy spot for USC, I think Clara could be a live dog here. I am with Kyle, however. I think the number's gotten too low. I think if it got to 11, I'd hop back in, but at 10, I can't hop in.
All right, guys, we kept everyone too long. Chat Mob, thanks for coming out. People watching the replay, thanks for watching. Please go to sbrpicks.com/NCAAB for more college basketball content. And again, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, SBR Sports Picks, and of course, like our video. Have a wonderful Tuesday. We will see you at the same time tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern.